Russell Broadbent.
Good morning, Mim. What are you doing to me? Stars, cats, mental health? Goodness gracious, what next? Singing cats.
Everything's on ABC Gippsland.
Wow.
Hey, Russell Broadbent, who do you think won the leaders' debate last night? And before you answer that, can you shake your Liberal bias, or as someone who's been in the Liberal Party and is now an independent, is that bias part of how you're experiencing the leaders' debate and the run-up to the election?
Absolutely not. I have a different perspective for the first time running as an independent, self-funded independent. You have a completely different look at what you're doing because that bias is gone. And you've got to remember, that was on Sky last night, so not a lot of people watched it. I rang, because I was coming on your program, I rang a couple of people. One watched a bird documentary and the other one didn't look at it at all. So, if it had been on free to air or on the ABC where it went right across the nation, the other thing I'd say to you, the 20% undecided was really big out of that not 100 people, and Mim, the Greens, One Nation, Family First, Independents, they weren't represented there last night. It was just the two leaders of the two major parties, and that was fine 20 years ago. But these days, there's a lot of other people vying for that place in the House of Reps, and it doesn't. There's 150 seats, and there'll be 150 contests, and that's only the national context you're looking at there.
Do you think that you're in a good position, Russell Broadbent? There is a move internationally towards the right of politics. As someone who's been in the Liberal Party, I can maybe safely say, although you have been unpredictable sometimes, Russell Broadbent, on where you stand on things, but maybe you're more to the right of politics. There's a move internationally for that. And then there's a move nationally here in Australia towards independence. Do you think that the current kind of climate bodes well for you?
Mim, I don't know. I've always thought myself to be in the common sense, sensible centre. One of the remarks that came out of last night in my conversations was they were underwhelmed by both leaders. But the good part that came out was we need a headspace in Warragul, and they're going to spend a whole lot of money on youth mental health, and I think that is absolutely fantastic. But, local issues matter, as your program tells you. Local issues matter.
Now, last night, I feel like Anthony Albanese for the Labor Party and Peter Dutton for the Liberal Party got a bit bogged down in data, dollars and dates. And they both disagreed. They both called each other maybe not in these words, but liars, and said that what you're saying isn't true. My set of dollars, dates and data is true and yours isn't, and vice versa. So it can get complicated getting bogged down in that. But aside from that, the big differences between the two parties, one of them is playing out right here, and that's nuclear. Where do you sit on nuclear as an independent? Traralgon, where it is proposed to go by the coalition, is right in the middle of Gippsland. Really, it affects us all. Is near the Latrobe River that connects into other waterways. Where do you sit on that?
Well, I say no nuclear without community support. Absolutely no nuclear without community support, because it's the community that has to respond to whatever that brings with it. So I'd say no wind farms without community support, and I don't think wind farms have got any community support. But I think both leaders were spinning last night. I'm looking at it from a different perspective. I know the truth about the issues that they were raising on health and cuts and all those things. And, I know there weren't cuts. I know that there was increased spending on health and education every year by every government, and they're just putting a huge spin as to which way they'd like people to go. And 20% of the people said, no, thanks.
So you read in, so the debate last night, 100 people there, 21 of the voters in the audience left last night's leadership debate, still undecided. It's a pretty big amount. Would you take that as people who are likely to vote independent, smaller parties?
Well, 40% of people are voting independent, smaller parties. in this election campaign. There's absolutely no doubt about that. So if you put that in the context of last night, you're only looking at 60% of the vote or less going to the major parties. So people are looking for other opportunities right across Australia. That's why I said 150 seats, 150 contests.
It was interesting, the questions that came up in the debate. Education seemed pretty high on people's lists, including university and concern for the future of universities, schools in your local area. And the other one was health and trust with Medicare and access to GPs. The other interesting question for your seat of Monash, Russell Broadbent, was around growing areas that were rural that are changing and populations booming. Those ideas of health and education kind of fit into that, because if you've got, and the seat of Monash fits right into that, areas that are growing quite quickly. Can you fight well enough for the seat of Monash to keep up with health and education in the area when it's growing so quickly? That seemed to be on people's minds last night.
If we're having a hung parliament, I have far more power than I've ever had before to deal with the issues like the Warragul Hospital and getting that sod turned on that hospital. These are really important issues to local people, and all of us want the best education we can get for our children. And there was more spin on those things last night because I've been around long enough to have the knowledge, Mim, to know exactly what governments spend and where they spend it.
Russell Broadbent, thank you for speaking with us today and for watching the leadership debate last night so we could talk about it today.
Thanks, Mim.